Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today we're going to do a little bit of a different series. We're going to do a series of what I like to call We Need to Talk. Now, I know those are the four most dreaded words that most men hate hearing, and I say them a lot, but we need to talk. Now, We Need to Talk is going to be a new series focused on me giving therapeutic advice. Now, this is not something I typically do in therapy sessions because I don't give advice in therapy sessions. What I typically do in therapy sessions is I give alternatives, I give options, and I leave it up to my clients to decide which option or alternative feels like it fits most into their own reality, their own situation. So I give alternative and options. I don't give advice in therapy. I give suggestions. But in this segment, I'm giving straight advice. And I encourage you to take this advice the same way you would take advice from someone who's never met you personally. If I've never met you personally, I want you to take this advice to some extent with a grain of salt because I don't know your personal situation. So the advice I'm giving may not fit the entirety of your situation. There may be aspects where it applies and there may be some where it don't. So I want to encourage you to take the advice in a way that's helpful for you. Take it with the understanding that I do not know you personally. Unless I know you personally, then I might be talking to you. Just gonna throw that out there. So today, what we need to talk about is the worst person or the number one person you should never lie to in your life. And that person so happens to be yourself. And here are some of the reasons why you don't want to lie to yourself. Now, number one is we do ourselves a disservice when we're not honest or truthful about who we are as a person, but also about the reality of our situations. Two, the reason why we don't want to lie to ourselves in most situations is because not being honest with yourself could cause you to remain in a situation far past its expiration date because you are engaging in things that keep you in that relationship or in that situation that are based on deceit that you're telling to yourself or deceit that you're accepting from someone else. Number three is any change predicated on or built off of a false narrative will likely not address your issue, will likely not get you any resolution that helps in any way. Because when we fix a lie, which is a lie is something that's deceitful, is something that's not true, then we implement things to fix that lie, then who does that help? And how is that helping? Because we're fixing something that doesn't exist. So if we're lying to ourselves and we're implementing changes based off those lies, 9 times out of 10, that's likely not to help you or anyone else that is affected by that situation. And going along with that is any changes we implement based off of false narrative, it's gonna feel good for the moment because it's addressing what we're telling ourselves is the truth. So that change feels good in the moment, but eventually that change will start to feel empty and unfulfilling because at the root of it is not actually fixing the reality of our lives or our situations. It's not fixing the reality that we live every day. It's fixing the lie that we're telling ourselves every day. And that can start to feel empty because it's not actually addressing the reality of yourself or your situation or the changes that need to be made for yourself or your situation. Now, the fourth reason goes along with kind of the third one is that we can't change what we don't acknowledge. So you can't change what you don't identify as truly being the truth about your situation or who you are. And you can't change if you're not willing to accept the reality of the situation or who you are as a person and the things that may need to change about you or that situation. If you don't acknowledge those things, chances of you changing it is less likely. And lastly, the reason why we shouldn't lie to ourselves is because sometimes when we're trying to keep up with this lie or if we're trying to avoid the reality of ourselves or our situations, you may engage in unhealthy strategies such as increased substance use or alcohol use to avoid the reality of the situation or the truth of a situation or the truth about yourself. Now, there are two ways we lie to ourselves. We may completely straight out lie. Complete straight out lie looks like I go outside and I see that the sky is clearly blue and I say to myself, the sky is purple or orange. That's a straight out lie to yourself. Your eyes are telling you exactly what the truth and the reality is, but your mind and your mouth are telling you something totally different. And you get to decide what you want to believe. Or we may lie by omission. And lying by omission is simply leaving out important parts of a narrative or things about ourselves or what needs to change in order to maybe make the situation seem less harmful or less needing of a change. So lie by omission is saying, yes, I'm in a really good relationship and we love each other and we're always going to be there for each other, and that loving each other and being there for each other accounts for about 10% of your relationship, while the other 90 is spent not feeling good in that relationship, not feeling like you have a say in the relationship, not feeling comfortable or safe or emotionally safe or mentally safe or secure in that relationship. That's 90%. So instead of focusing on the entire 100% of that relationship dynamic, you only focus on that 10%, that 10% of where we love each other and we got each other's back. That's about 10% of your relationship, and that happens about 10% of the time. Meanwhile, 90% is all of this uncertainty, all of this unhealthy behaviors in a relationship. It's adjusting to things that you don't feel comfortable with, is never really feeling secure or like you are in a healthy relationship. But instead of focusing on that 90%, you highlight that 10% and actually don't even pay attention to that 90%. So that's another way we lie to ourselves. We lie by omission. We leave out the important things that let us know the reality and the truth of our situation. And there are ways that we currently lie to ourselves. Most of the time, we lie to ourselves by accepting things that we know that we don't truly want to accept. We agree to things to avoid conflicts. We agree to things that we know aren't in our best interest, aren't really something that we want to do, but we agree to it because we don't want to argue. Or being agreeable because we feel like we may lose something or someone if we aren't agreeing to something that is not something that we want to agree to, is not something that we're willing to do, is not something that we're willing to keep up with our side of that agreement because it's not something that we fully agree with to begin with. But we do so to avoid having to deal with conflicts, or we don't want to make someone else feel bad. We don't want to actually feel the guilt of saying, I don't want to do that, or that's not something that I'm agreeable with. So we agree to things that we don't really want to do, but in that moment we're lying to ourselves and saying that this agreement is okay because it feels more comfortable to agree than it does to disagree. Lastly, a way we lie to ourselves is by dismissing how we're feeling about a situation or ourselves. We may lie and say, I truly love myself, and then some days you really may not truly like yourself, and you don't actually give voice to where that dislike of self is coming from in order for you to fully investigate what is driving this dislike of me. And when we don't actually address that fact that I don't always love myself every day, and because I don't always love myself every day, how do I deal with that part of me that I feel like if I face it in the mirror or if anyone else sees it, they won't like me as a person. So I don't actually give voice to that part of myself that I dislike some parts of me, or I don't face the fact that I don't look in the mirror and see myself fully, because if I don't do that, then I don't have to address the reason why I feel that way about myself. So if I lie to myself and say, yes, I love me, then I don't have to deal with the part of me that I don't like. But dealing with that part of you don't like, it can open up so many avenues for being comfortable in your own skin. And when we're comfortable in our own skin and we accept who we are wholeheartedly, when we are not trying to live behind a facade, or we're not putting on a mask of what people want to see from us or how people want to judge us, when we aren't lying to ourselves about who we are, when we're able to take a full look in the mirror and accept who we are, flaws and all, then we are less likely to accept who other people tell us that we are. When you know who you are inside and out, someone else trying to tell you who you are is less acceptable. And also, someone critiquing you or providing a critique feels less threatening because you are aware that you have flaws. You are aware that there may be things about you that need some level of change. And someone's critique does not feel like a complete dismantling of how we see ourselves, because ourselves is not built on a foundation of lies or a mask or roles that we give ourselves based off an idea of this role as opposed to what we truly feel that role should represent. Because it's not built on that foundation of lies, when someone says that this is something that is problematic, you do not see that as a threat. You do not see that as a complete dismantling or a complete disregard for who you are as a person. You're able to say, yeah, I'm a human being, I'm not perfect, so yeah, that might be something I need to work on. Because you are honest with yourself, and you probably already knew that was something that you needed to work on, but somebody else pointed it out. So you're not offended by it because you accept yourself. You see yourself as wholly who you are, and you're not trying to hide any aspect of who you are from yourself or from people who you truly care about. Now, last thing I want to talk about when we're dealing with lies, when we're lying to ourselves about the reality of who we are and the reality of our situations, is that lying takes effort. Lying takes a lot of effort, because not only do I have to keep a comfortable with the lie I've told. Now if somebody asks me a question, if people try to clarify, now I have to try to figure out, what do I need to add to this lie that doesn't contradict something I've already said before, that won't come up in the future if I say something or do something that don't align with this lie. So lying takes more effort than just being truthful about a situation. And have you ever noticed that when you're lying either to yourself or to someone else about the reality of who you are, your situation, when people ask you too many questions, anger comes out. You're just upset. You're not upset about them asking you questions. You're upset because you cannot think of a lie fast enough to keep up with the original lie that you told. So you're tired of people asking you questions. So let's say someone says they were in a car accident. You're like, well, where was the accident? And that question sets them off. Now they're angry. You always asking me questions. You act like you don't believe nothing I say. Most of the time that anger is coming from them not being honest and not being able to think of an additional lie to tell to the original one that can go in line with what's happening. Now, I get it. There are some questions that we ask or that people ask that is based off of themselves trying to be hurtful or trying to be harmful. Myself personally, I don't mind questions in most cases, but there are certain types of questions that feel disrespectful or upsetting to me. Now, we all have certain questions that feel disrespectful or upsetting to us, but most of the time, those questions that tend to feel upsetting or those avenues that people tend to ask questions about aren't things that are situational or reality based. For instance, someone sitting in my office to see me as a doctor and then asking me, do I have the credentials to do the work that I'm literally doing at that moment? Those questions are a little bit different because in that moment, those questions aren't coming from a genuine place. Those questions are coming from a place where you are trying to maybe be hurtful or harmful. Who knows? I won't speculate on somebody else's reasoning. But there are times when we get questions that are less genuine, that feels like they're less genuine and more along the lines of, I'm trying to figure out a way to hurt you or cause some level of harm or to embarrass you or do something deceitful in those moments. I'm not talking about those questions. I'm talking about those questions where you have lied about a situation and now you're trying to figure out what's the new lie I need to tell to go in line with what I'm already telling myself or this lie I'm already trying to get away with telling. That's why lying requires so much effort, because you have to think about what you are supposed to say or what you're supposed to be doing as opposed to simply telling the truth. The truth doesn't need a story. The truth is just that. When you're being honest, when you're giving factual information about a situation or yourself, when it's based off facts, then you don't have to give a story. Then it doesn't need validation because in that moment, the facts are what they are. But that tends to be how people react when they are trying to keep up with the lies that they're telling. And people will get upset. Even you will get upset with yourself when you're trying to face the reality of a situation or face the reality of yourself. So in this, we need to talk. The number one person that you should not lie to is yourself. Because when you are honest with who you are, when you're honest about your situation, when you face the reality of what you're dealing with, then true change can happen. But when we're operating from a false narrative, when we're operating from a lie, then any changes we implement will only be short-lived because we are only fixing in that moment the falsehood or the lie that you've told yourself that may or may not exist in reality. So be willing to be completely honest with you about yourself and about any situation you're in. And that takes courage. That takes a level of strength that not everyone is always prepared to deal with. Because being honest with you and seeing yourself as fully who you are without trying to sugarcoat or put a fancy gloss on it or put a fancy title on it, just seeing yourself as who you are, flaws and all, we can live an authentic life. We can live a life without having to put on a show, without having to put on a mask, without having to be or pretend to be someone that is not genuine to us. We don't have to respond or operate in that way. So when we allow ourselves to see ourselves fully, when we live authentically, and also when we allow ourselves to see our situations as they truly are, we don't get stuck in hope or we don't get stuck in trying to see the best in someone. We're able to see the situation for what it is and actually identify if there is any hope or if this person is deserving of the benefit of doubt. That's when we're honest about ourselves and about the situation. So be you. As always, please feel free to jot down any thoughts, questions, or comments you have below. I'll keep this series up as long as I can think of topics to kind of discuss as far as advice is concerned. If you have some ideas, jot them down. I hope there's advice you can take from this video today. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.